Hey folks, Alex Wiss. I'm here with Nousot to talk about how GenAI is disrupting migrations, as it's disrupting many things in the industry these days. As I mentioned, Alex Wiss, I'm a lead architect at Nousot. Nousot, we're an end-to-end analytics consulting firm. We focused on, we like to say we advise, modernize, and enable. So everything from doing strategy, creating an analytics roadmap, creating a solution architecture, a high-level architecture for your organization, actually modernizing, so building that architecture for you, doing migrations onto that architecture, building out data pipelines, and then the enablement, right? So actually making sure that we're realizing business value, actually delivering on those business outcomes for the organization, which is really important to us, and we'll talk about that throughout the presentation as well. I also lead a group called Nousot Labs within the organization. So Nousot Labs is the group that is a group that's dedicated. Yeah. You can't? Okay. What if I say louder? Yeah? Okay. Is that too loud for people in the front? Is that too loud for the mic? All right. Cool. I'll project. So Nousot Labs is the group within the organization that is focused solely on research and development and trying to find ways in order to help our clients in the field and deliver, or consultants in the field, deliver faster and better for our clients, right? So these days we focus a lot on things like how do we implement generative AI? How do we effectively use generative AI to be more efficient? That's what we'll talk about today, specifically in migrations, right? But all sorts of accelerators, building solutions, building utilities that can be reused across clients in order to help deliver that value and those value drivers faster. When we talk about migrations, to me, I think it's really important to remember why we're doing a migration, right? And focus on those business outcomes in the first place. If you work with me, I like to say, we want to do the fun stuff faster, right? When we talk about generative AI, it's all about how do we make sure that we're doing the fun stuff faster. To me, I don't know what y'all like to do on weekends, but for me, it's how do we optimize inventory and save money using a demand forecast? How do we prevent wildfires by using computer vision to detect down lines before it causes one? How do we increase sales by targeting customers better with a next best product or next best action model, right? Those are the things that are kind of the fun stuff, right? The things that really matter to an organization. So when we talk about moving to a modern platform like a Databricks, there's a lot of kind of technical benefits, and Jeff just talked about some of those as well. You get your lower total cost of ownership, you get your performance increases, you're unifying your engineering and your analytics, you're getting greater visibility into the things that are happening on that platform. All of that stuff is really important, right? Don't get me wrong. But what's really exciting is the opportunity to transform the way that your organization works, right? To, deliver faster because you have all these tools, right? To deliver those use cases faster, to move from descriptive analytics to predictive and prescriptive analytics, right? To do, start to actually predict where the market is going and how to kind of handle that within your organization. Enabling a lot of the fun stuff that Jeff just talked about, AI BI, Genie spaces, right? Some of the Mosaic agent builder and agent frameworks, right? Those are really important. Those are transformative within an organization. Not to mention the opportunity for things like data sharing, right? Sharing data within organizations, potentially even opening up new revenue streams when we talk about being able to monetize data outside of your organization as well as inside of it. So these are the things that are really important. So when it comes to migration, the faster that we can migrate, the faster we get all the fun stuff, right? And I think that sometimes gets lost when we think about these things. So, if we can use GenAI or any technology to accelerate those migrations, that's a huge win for the organization, for the business. Problem is, migration's generally pretty hard. We've had a number of clients, especially recently, that have come to us, hey, we're kind of halfway through a migration, we've tried, we got most of the stuff converted, but now we don't know how to test it. A lot of times people kind of just assume that getting the code converted is the hard part. It's not necessarily true. There's a lot that goes into migrating that isn't just code conversion. You got to make sure that you're doing change management, that you come up with a plan that is going to minimize the impact to the business, right? And, maintain business continuity. All of that stuff is really important. We had a specific client that came to us recently that was doing a TISA migration, and they, we were kind of talking to them, and they're like, yeah, no, we got everything. Everything's converted. It's great. I was like, okay, so you're on Databricks? They're like, nope, we don't know how to test it. We don't know how to get there, but it's all converted and it's running. And we're like, okay, great. So you're not actually there. There's a lot of like halfway or people that have kind of come and they're months behind schedule, these sorts of things. It's a difficult process. I have my kind of cycle of pain and suffering that I like to refer to. Usually some combination of you kind of convert code to your fancy new platform. You run that code. You're trying to validate against your old platform. Your SSIS, your Informatica, your SQL Server, etc. You come to realize that a bunch of the code that you were using in the old environment actually might not have been good. And this is a very specific pain point for me. You're probably doing a lookup that's just a race condition and picking a random random record from your dimension table. It happens surprisingly often. Whoever built that functionality in SSIS owes me a number of beers. Then you make this decision: are you going to break your code in your new platform, or are you going to fix the code in the old platform? It's just this kind of iterative and usually painful cycle. So again, anytime that we can automate some of that or increase the velocity at which we can do this cycle or eliminate the cycle altogether, huge win. So for us, that's, as soon as we started to see, we at Nousot started to see these kind of transformative, like these huge breakthroughs in generative AI, these are the types of things that we started to, get really excited about. How can we, stop doing some of these things or accelerate some of these things? So we've started to build utilities around, multiple parts within the, kind of that migration lifecycle. So assessment, right? Can we, build a better and more detailed plan or a more detailed inventory of assets and whether or not they need to be moved and what is the complexity of moving them, right? So that we can get upfront, right off the bat, a good idea of exactly how long it's going to take to move them, what the complexity of each asset is, whether or not that asset is important. Can we do better in planning? Can we derive the lineage graph, right? Using generative AI and using that to determine, okay, we can move this little chunk first because it's isolated and it's up front. This thing over here actually isn't doing anything, so we can skip it entirely. Coming up with a better plan so that we're not blindsided by things that, we find are running in that old environment because somebody pushed them directly to prod 3 years ago and they've been running ever since, right? Execution, obviously the most important part. We want to make sure that we can convert code as fast as possible. Generative AI for us has proven to be really good at that. It's just providing that initial set of code that is going to be kind of tailored to the environment. But then also validation. So can we use generative AI to kind of self-heal, self-correct, right? If code isn't generated correctly the first time, can we run it past that error to a GenAI agent and have it fix it and correct it? If we do our like-for-like validation against our old environment, our new environment, do these two tables match because the ELT or ETL process should be matching, and there's a discrepancy, can we feed that to an agent and have it fix it instead of having a team of people who is just constantly kind of like doing break fix in this iterative, my little cycle of suffering from before. So I mentioned that AI-driven approach, right? When we talk about acceleration in this space, what we're usually talking about is automation, right? How many things can we automate to make them move faster? And so, a lot of kind of existing migration accelerators or tools, what they'll typically give you is a rules-based engine that's going to give you an initial set of code, that initial converted code to your new Databricks platform. It's a notebook, it's a Delta Live table, it's a DB SQL script, right? And that's great, but it kind of typically stops there. And so you're still left with this cycle of running it, correcting it, testing it, making sure it all works, getting it published. That's still, when I talk about code conversion isn't the only thing in a migration, that's what I'm talking about. There's a lot that goes into it after the code is converted, even if it's 100% converted. And typically it's not, right? There's some level of conversion and automation, but it's not all the way there. That's where, we have started to look at using an agent-driven approach. So for us, an autonomous or semi-autonomous AI agent that can interact with the environment, make these decisions about how to handle these scenarios, right? So that that agent can, compare tables, right? It can run notebooks, see if there's a syntax error. If there is a syntax error, right, there's a missing column, it can list tables and columns in the Databricks environment. It can run commands potentially to see what the output, it will, kind of intelligently figure out, okay, I'm going to run this command, I'm going to print that data frame, I'm going to see, what data is in there, and I'm going to iterate based on that. So the agent can kind of do a lot of these things that, typically you would have a team of people to do, right? So you're not only accelerating, but you're also scaling the amount of work that one person can do, right? And that a small team can do. And creating this ability for a small team to be able to handle a large migration, because you essentially have a team of agents, of AI agents, doing a lot of the kind of iterative break fix work, which is really, really important. And that's where you get kind of, the massive acceleration of, I'm just going to take this one little work stream or this business unit, and I'm just going to throw an agent at it, and I'm going to, go work on something else that AI can't do. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to see how it did, right? And I'm going to correct it if I need to, or maybe it just completed the whole thing. That's a huge level of acceleration for kind of a person to be able to oversee that, right? Another thing we found to be, especially powerful when it comes to utilizing GenAI for migrations is steerability. So this is probably really hard to see, but I'll kind of describe it and I'll just kind of talk about it. So at least we found a lot of times when people are doing a migration, there's almost never a true lift and shift, right? You want to do something. You want to switch everything to snake case from camel case. You want to take advantage of best practices within your Databricks platform. You want to maybe you just want to rename some tables because they didn't make sense in the old environment, and now you're going to rename them instead of to stem the bleeding and stop that pain of having tables that make no sense, right? So these are the sorts of things that when we built our utility for migration, it was really important that we have this steerability. So if you want to just put in plain English, right? Hey, use descriptive column names instead of generic ones. So this is a really simple example, but over on the left, you'll see the aggregate columns are just called Ag1, Ag2, Ag3, Ag4, right? Not particularly helpful for anybody. So I said, hey, use more descriptive names, and I got, average quantity, average list price, average coupon amount, average sales price, right? Fairly basic example, but at scale, that's a huge capability. Or, a little more, again, I wanted to change the table name. Because instead of having a catalog sales table, I have a generic sales table that has a sale type column, right? So you can kind of give it things like that, and it will determine, okay, so I need to replace the table name, and I'm going to add this join condition to make sure that I'm only joining on sales types of catalog. So fairly simple examples, but you can imagine over the course of tens, hundreds, thousands of different jobs or queries, the ability to kind of do some of these things at scale across the entire EDW platform or warehouse platform, or just at specific kind of granularity, really, really important and really, really flexible. Again, it's something that allows you to do a lot of things in flight during migration without adding any time that are really important and really meaningful changes. Something else that we find really important, and Franco and I were kind of just talking about this before, it seems like a lot of people are coming to the same conclusion, which is great, is if you can migrate faster, right, and you can automate a lot of the migration, it changes your approach to migration, right? I think there's a lot of times when you're moving from a legacy platform to a modern platform like a Databricks, there's a little bit of there's a desire to say, okay, well, we're going to rewrite everything anyway, so let's just do it as part of the migration, and let's bite that bullet now, and let's change our data model and rewrite all of the code, and we're going to implement this framework, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think all of that is really important, but the problem is, the only thing worse than maintaining a data platform is maintaining two data platforms. So the more that you try to put into that conversion and that modernization, the longer you're going to be stuck with both of those platforms existing, both your legacy and your new platform. And the problem with that is that it ends up either complicating your migration and adding risk to that, or you have to kind of stop doing development in your old platform, or you have to decide, hey, we're going to move everything to the new platform. It's a really tricky situation, and it's part of why migrations tend to drag on a lot in a lot of situations. But if you can accelerate that migration part, right, and do more of a lift and shift, and then a modernize, then you're getting off your old platform, you're getting off of your Teradata 3-year commit contract, right? Which sounds like there's pain from certain people, right? Those sorts of things, and you're focused on Databricks, and then you can iteratively modernize. You can iteratively make those improvements to your platform, as opposed to having to do a much larger implementation. So we usually start with, kind of call it a high-level 3-phased approach. The first is, replication or federation. We want to be doing that demand forecasting model for inventory optimization, right? So what do we need? Okay, we need these 10, 15, 20 tables. Let's replicate those up, or let's federate those. Let's have people doing development off of those. Once we start to actually realize the value, well, then we can start kind of replacing that federation or replication with, migration. All right, let's move the workloads that are loading those tables from our legacy platform up into our new platform, continue to deliver in that new platform. And then ultimately, once we've got that migration completed, then we can focus on modernization, right? Because we have all the data in the new environment. This is it. It makes sure that you, instead of having to continue to deliver on your old platform when the business needs new insights, needs new models, right? You can deliver all of that in your new platform. You minimize risk because you're maintaining business continuity, because once you do start the migration, you're migrating kind of under the hood, and the consumers actually don't even need to know that a table has been replaced by a new data pipeline built in the new platform. And then you get the opportunity to kind of iteratively modernize instead of doing a big bang, which gives you, again, the business continuity, the minimized risk, and there's just the opportunity to kind of decide when and where it makes sense to continue to modernize certain things. The other benefit of this is you can kind of, once you get into the new platform, you get the visibility of kind of knowing what people are consuming, and you can use that to make a lot of decisions about what actually needs to be migrated, which is a huge win as well, right? So you can actually, you can minimize your migration by just kind of determining what isn't really relevant to your business. Cool. I think that is my quick presentation. I do have a demo that I can show as well, and I will see if I can get this up here really quick. It's just a simple one to kind of show some of the power of the approach and utility. So how does this look? Tammy, you're my guide here. No, totally. Yeah. Little small? We can, all right. That's going to fix itself, Jay. No, I don't know. Better? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So, right, we've essentially built our utility into kind of composable high-level operators, right? Because migrations are rarely all the same, and so this gives us the flexibility to kind of build the migration that we want. So we've got the ability, and this demo in particular here is connecting directly to a Snowflake environment and just kind of converting a handful of tables and views and queries. So in this particular case, right, I'm actually connecting directly to my Snowflake environment. You can see I've got my host and port, saved as Databricks secrets here, and my username and password. And I can kind of just kick it off, and it'll convert my tables. Just pushes them directly into my Databricks environment, into Unity Catalog, making sure that the DDL that is generating is correct and syntactically valid, right? It's also going to be relevant later when we actually start to translate and convert code that is running against these tables. Table conversion is kind of boring because it usually works. DDL is pretty straightforward. It almost always completes on the first go around, unless you have something really complicated like an external table or something like that. We also have the ability to kind of, we call it testing DDL. What that's going to do, it's actually going to kind of like move sample data over, make sure that all the data types match data is actually going to fit in the tables that we created. Also gives us a nice test bed of data for kind of any subsequent steps. That was the boring part. Now, the fun part is actually kind of converting. In this particular case, this is a SQL query, right? So essentially, what would be like an ELT portion of a data environment. So this is one of the Databricks professional services folks actually gave us this one as kind of an example of queries that give other tools, more quote unquote traditional tools, trouble. So in this particular case, there's a couple things that trip it up. The main one being try to numeric doesn't exist in Databricks. It's a Snowflake syntax. There's equivalents in Databricks, but it's not exactly the same. So if you kind of try to pull this query and just run it, it'll fail, which we'll see. So if I run our utility against that query, what we're going to see is initial conversion. We see kind of we have some verbosity, right? You'll see the agent kind of quote unquote reasoning, right? We can argue about whether or not it's actually reasoning. Right, you can kind of see how it's handling the situation. Qualify clause, retained, supported in Databricks SQL. Great job. Let's see, anything else? Try to numeric and split part functions were retained as they're supported. That's wrong. Try to numeric is not supported, but that's fine. It'll figure it out in a second. It did understand that the date cast functionality, it changed the casting, right, to make it to actually use the cast function instead of the implicit colon. Row number over partition clauses, which is supported. So for the most part, it's reasoning correctly. You'll see that that iterative process, right? We kind of created the notebook directly into the Databricks workspace that I'm in, just kind of in a shared folder. We ran that notebook. You'll see failed, unresolved routine or function, try to numeric, right? So it was wrong. It now realizes the error in its ways. Let's see, what's it going to do instead? And the original SQL function might not have been used. I'm going to go ahead and use cast, and I'm going to continue to use split, which is part of the original code base as well. You can see, we've got it actually printing out the function calls, the tool calls that the agent is making. So, right, it's invoking make change, which is actually going to make that change directly in the notebook. Looks like try to numeric. It's going to replace that with a cast. Great job. So let's see. Looks like it casted as int. Replaced both of them. Decided to rerun the notebook. So this is, it's not the agent is has the ability to do all these things. It's not just kind of like make changes and rerun the notebook. In this particular case, made the change, decided to rerun the notebook, said it's ready to test it again. Failed with a second error. In this particular case, it looks like the column with name event timestamp. This is going to be a large, beautiful Databricks error message. So I'll just kind of skip down. Let's see, why did it come up with error message indicates column event TS cannot be resolved in that qualify clause. Looks like it decided instead of using the column alias, it needed to use the original column name. It's great job. That's correct. Use the original column name in the qualify clause. So it's going to go ahead and make that change. Qualify row number. Reasoning change has been successfully made to replace event TS. Rerun the notebook. Oh, looks like it found it one more time. Oh, I hope it succeeded. Oh, it did. Okay. Whew. Live demos, I actually didn't check to see whether it fixed it. So you'll see, like after, let's see, it took 4 tries, took about 4 minutes. It's actually a little on the high side, frankly. 4 minutes, 4 tries, fixed it totally on its own, right? No intervention. Just was able to reason with itself, figure it out. Now we've got a completely successfully migrated query. Great, right? That's only half the battle. We also were going to have to test it, make sure that it returns the same output. But before we do that, the kind of talking about that steerability. So that's something kind of we built in as these kind of like custom prompt functionality. So it decided to do a cast. What I would prefer is since we're using a try to numeric, I'd probably prefer it uses a try cast, right? To kind of mimic that same functionality. So I'm just going to tell it that in plain English. I'm going to say, hey, use try cast instead of my cast. You can see this time around in the reasoning. Number 2, replace try to numeric with try cast as per instruction. Great job. Way to listen. So you'll see the converted query in that particular case. Actually went through, missed the same thing, event timestamp, but ultimately did make the conversion, was a little bit faster this time around because I kind of told it how to handle that certain situation that tricked it up. So this is, we use this, that kind of the user prompt injection for a number of things, right? Sometimes for to help it with things that it can't figure out, which happens every once in a while. Sometimes to tell it how to handle certain situations because we want to handle them in that way, like in try-cast. Sometimes we'll, tell it to update syntax, take into account certain conventions, or even, if there's kind of like reusable utilities that a client has already written, and we're just, we're coming in and doing a second half of a migration. Hey, use this utility in this situation, use this function, use this framework. So, it's really flexible and steerable for whatever kind of a client needs there, which is really great. Last part is kind of what I talked about is, the having code that runs is great, but ultimately that's only half the battle, right? The code needs to actually run and have the same output. So we've got, kind of these operators for that as well. So in this particular case, it converted the code successfully. I went in and broke it, which I can do again. And you'll see kind of exactly what change I made in a second. But in this particular case, so we've got it spitting out exactly the data. So what it's doing, it's hitting the Snowflake environment with the original query. It's hitting the Databricks environment with the converted query. It's slamming those together. It's doing all your checks, your minuses, your counts, your join to compare columns, etc. And if there's any discrepancies, right, it'll spit those out and it'll kind of throw those directly at the agent. In this particular case, we've got, 6 records in the Snowflake environment, 3 records in the Databricks environment. So clearly that's going to leave a difference. It looks like all the records actually match. We just have a difference of 3, right? So in this particular case, it's going to actually, reviewed the SQL query, might be related to filter conditions in the where clause or the qualify clause. Looks like it's going to retrieve the original code. That's one of the functions it has access to. Original code and the current notebook are mostly aligned. It looks like somebody fat-fingered a 7 into a 2. This difference could be causing the mismatch. It's probably true. Update the condition in the notebook. Looks like it made that change. Where is it? Yep, tool name, make change, rerun notebook. Query returns 6 rows in Databricks and 6 rows in Snowflake, so now they match exactly. Fixed itself. It fixed itself. Well, technically it fixed me, but...
So this is what we converted the code, it tested it on the fly, it ran a test case. It said, okay, there's a delta between the data in Snowflake, the data in Databricks, and then it realized that there was an error, and then it made a decision to fix it.
Yeah, so I can, Yeah, so you can screw around with it, and I'm just going to, the other one I like to do is like a fat finger column alias or something.
So is it just Snowflake?
It's just the easiest to pick on.
Yeah.
Am I on?
So how, in terms of speed, how much time do you think it would save in like a conversion? You don't normally get armies of people like doing the conversion, doing the testing. Now you have like a generative AI bot.
Yeah, I mean, we say like 80%, which is kind of what I would say we see just in terms of level of effort. Again, you kick it off, you go do something actually important, like figure out what the path of migration is going to be and talk to the business stakeholders about how to actually, how they're going to do cutover, and you kind of let it run a little bit. So I made a different change here. I just did a column alias, but, kind of similar thing, delivery ID column, correct the mismatch. I should kind of fix this in a second here. So yeah, it's massively important. Now, it's not a panacea. Once you start to get to a certain scale of query of ETL job, right? It struggles a little bit more, and that's where you kind of come in and you see what it's doing, and you kind of see the notebook it created, and you maybe make a couple of really obvious changes, and then you kick it off again, right? And you let it go, and you let it kind of take the rest of the way. So this is actually taking longer than there it is. I jinxed it. So you can do that. This is an example of doing this, right? This is like think of it as an ELT query, right? Something that's easy to pull into a data frame and slam together. But it functions similarly with table comparison as well, right? So for something that is kind of coming from something like an SSIS job and is getting converted into a notebook where it doesn't have an output, but it's writing directly to the table. You can do table comparison. Kind of just pull the original table in the legacy platform, pull the table in Databricks, compare those two values. Obviously, kind of ignore your key columns, the way we built it for, if there's multiple tables or multiple notebooks, right, multiple processes loading a target table, what it'll actually do is pull from the Unity catalog lineage, determine kind of what notebooks loaded that table, can potentially open those notebooks, see what happened, kind of try to find the original code, make changes, rerun notebooks, and then repair. So pretty useful in those situations as well. Yes, depends on the language. Although we actually recently have started working with a couple of people on like code conversion, like Scala conversion as well. That's not directly related to your question, but code conversion is proven to be pretty good. So like JavaScript, Snowflake table, or Snowflake functions, stuff like that, I'd expect to be pretty good. But things like stored procedures, like SQL-based stuff, we've got built out. It does great. We used the TPC DI, right, and did a Snowflake version of that migration pretty recently. We have like benchmarks for it and everything. Yeah.
So I have a question about like the whole process. So maybe I'm wrong. Like, let me understand.
Sure.
Let's say I'll give you a scenario. So my client is the EU. So there's like a client and multiple things.
Sure.
So to access the data or like the data warehouse that is in that particular region, I have connected to VPN, give my credentials, wait for my VPN.
Yeah.
Can I use this agentic framework that if I want to convert like table names to something else, I can add one extract, which makes no sense in a holistic view.
Sure.
And if I want to have like particular table or the name of the thing, particular format, I'm telling the whole thing to the agent. I'm assuming it's origin behind the scene. So if I tell an agent to, hey, like, you have to connect to VPN and I will give you all the secrets and all the credentials, but you have to wait because the VPN kind of blocks and automated work. How would I do about it?
That would be a good question. If you're like you're running it, so we have this as something we can actually deploy into Databricks. You can run it locally on your machine. You can run it in any it's a Python tool, so you can run it kind of anywhere. So it's kind of a question of like, where do you want to deploy it versus like, how do you want to tell it to handle situations? If you're just kind of like handling a shaky VPN connection, I would just tell it, hey, add retry logic to anything that you write, and hopefully it would be able to pick up on that. It's good at adding that sort of stuff, so it would be something like that. But as far as just like getting around connectivity issues, that's just kind of the nature of where you're running it, and we built it to be portable so that you can kind of run it wherever.
It's not using a Databricks functionality in the Python app. It's basically just using it built. What is it using for LLM?
We use a library called Light LLM. So essentially, we've abstracted the backend. We support. We've used OpenAI. We've used Databricks and DBRX custom endpoints. We've used Bedrock. With like Anthropic Claude models, so it's abstracted. It's just a parameter that we throw in there. We've thrown it against Azure OpenAI. We've thrown it against a good amount of stuff. Varying success depending on which one you used. I'd love to actually try like fine tuning a model at some point. We don't have a big enough like test set yet of like curated. Hey, here's exactly how we want you to respond. Something we're working on. So far, it is GenAI and prompt engineering. We kind of give it some specific, hey, here is how you should handle this situation. I mean, prompt is pretty complex at this point, but now we just tell it, here's how we want you to handle this situation. Here's all the things you have access to in the environment. Here is the context of the situation that you're in. Figure it out. Usually does a pretty good job. If I'm being completely honest with you, it's a custom framework for agents that we built. So, yeah, probably could have used one. Would have been the smart thing to do, but now we got a lot more control over it. So, cool. I just have one more slide, which is kind of the what's next slide. which is, this is great, right? But like, what happens after the migration is done? What are the other things that we can use these kind of principles and approaches towards, right? So some of the things that we're working on or built out are automated code review, right? When you submit a pull request, a lot of the things that you end up finding, hey, you left a comment in here. Hey, can we delete this code block instead of commenting it out? Hey, this is the wrong naming convention, right? Let's just automate that. We'll have an agent that'll go through, as soon as you submit a PR, go through all the code, maybe look at the environment, provide immediate feedback. That way, reviewers can focus on the important part, which is how have you designed this system, right? As opposed to the minutia of best practices. Can we build an autonomous data engineer? We've proven that an autonomous agent can function effectively within the Databricks environment. So can we just, instead of having it correct code, can we have it write code? Where you give it you give it a task, hey, generate a data pipeline to do this thing, and it just goes and it builds it, right? And it tests it within the environment, and it submits that pull request for you for that human review. Can we do self-healing data pipelines? Again, we've proven that we can correct things when they fail. So how about when I submit a pull request, if a test fails or if something in my CI check fails, it just goes and fixes it. Lets me focus on actually designing the system and not, hey, I fat fingered a column name here. It'll correct that for me. Can we get all the way to self-healing data pipelines, either in lower environments or GASP in production? No, I don't know if I would trust it to do that, but you can imagine, instead of getting a call at 3 a.m., an AI agent kicks in, it sends you a notification, it handles a data situation, an edge case that has never come up before intelligently, it automatically reruns that data pipeline, data gets loaded successfully, all is well. And all the engineers on call get to sleep in, right? So I think there's kind of like a massive amount of possibility here with the stuff that we've built to continue to evolve and expand, and that's kind of like where we're going next. Cool. Awesome. Appreciate it, folks. Thanks for letting me chat.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Hopefully, can you all hear me now? Back? Awesome. All right. My name's Franco Patano. You're probably wondering, who is this guy? I got this really cute family. It's not my house. It's not my castle. Actually, my wife said, hey, wouldn't it be fun to go do an Airbnb weekend at a castle or something? And I was like, sure. But then this thing, it was just like this old brick building. I was like, that's not really a castle, but whatever. It was fun. The kids had a great time. I am a lead product specialist at Databricks. I lead up our data warehousing practice. Before Databricks, I spent over 15 years in industry in the Chicagoland area, worked with some of you in the room. Alex and I actually ran some circles. Hey, Bill. Worked in banking at Wintrust, commercial real estate at JLL, and then before that I was in education at Career Education Corporation. I grew up in the MSBI stack, so SQL Server, SSIS. I've tumbled with all of those, similarly to how Alex hates those products as well, because we've been made to do weird and strange things with them. And I always dreamed about joining a startup and changing the world. And then Databricks knocked on my door about 6-ish years ago. And I always thought if we could put a data warehouse on a data lake, you could really do everything on a data lake. That would be the way to go. And then we kind of had a lake house, and the rest is history. I dig time travel, both fiction and nonfiction. If anyone wants to talk about quantum mechanics and general relativity, hit me up afterwards. I also make pizza from scratch. The dough, I buy the cheese. Just so we're straight, I don't milk the cows. And ever since I was an analyst, I've always had a dislike for the data warehouse, because every time I needed data, I always used to hear, well, that data is not in the warehouse. But where's the data? Well, it's in staging. Why can't I have it in the warehouse? Well, it's going to take 6 months and about $100,000. And no one really wanted to do that. So I was like, why is this warehouse always in my way? For those of you who don't know who Databricks is, you probably do. Jeff gave that great introduction on Summit. But if you don't, this is a little bit about us. Over 12,000 customers globally, about $4 billion in investment. And I think the latest number that Ali said in the news is $1.5 billion in revenue. Maybe you've heard some of the open source projects we've created, like Spark, Apache Spark, Delta Lake, and MLflow. And that's a little bit about us. So Databricks has kind of come a long way in the past few years. A lot of people know us for our notebooks, data science and machine learning company. Obviously, we're a clear leader in data science and machine learning. kind of pissed off Microsoft and Google that we were higher than them, just in case anyone was wondering. But then, we're also a leader in database management systems, which not a lot of people actually know that Databricks is a leader in database management systems. If you see Snowflake is back here, just pointing that out. And then in Lakehouse, we are the clear leader all the way up here. So usually when I start these things, everybody wants to dive into GenAI. They're like, oh, it's this shiny new toy we all need to get, and we need to be doing pre-training. But that's like the hardest part. You should really not be going towards pre-training right away. We should actually be slowly getting into it. But these things are very complex to build. We know what it takes to build them, because actually we acquired a company about 1.5 years ago called Mosaic, and they came to Databricks to build models. And we built our first foundational model, DBRX. And they actually used all of Databricks to do it. They used our notebooks, they used Delta Immunity, they used their cloud GPUs, we call it Mosaic Multi-Cloud Training. They used MLflow to track everything. They used our dashboards and our SQL warehouse to analyze it and gauntlet the model. And they used our foundational model APIs along with the model playground in order to test it and to really put the screws to it. So we've actually built these things. But when we talk to customers, most people are struggling connecting all these dots in the cloud. They're like, I got to do this. I got to connect my orchestration. I got to connect this. I got to connect that. My data's over here. My data lake's over here. And it's a real struggle connecting all these dots in the cloud because the data is siloed. These applications are disconnected. Data privacy is like a thing that not many people are focused on. And then if you really want to build these things, especially DIY in the cloud, you're going to need highly technical people that are very, very expensive. And they're actually not very prevalent on the market. So it's really, really hard to get started. But the thing that we're talking about tonight is migrations. How do we ease the migrations? Because actually what we're seeing is before we can actually do the fun stuff in GenAI, we actually have to get our data right. And there is so much technical debt in these existing enterprise data warehouses that a lot of people are just struggling to get to the point where they can start doing these things. It's like, how do I get to a point where I've paid off my technical debt? And as we've been talking in this space, there's a lot of people in the crowd. We've been working with Nousot. Also, we got Thomas saying here from West Monroe. There's a lot of partners that have been pushing the envelope on how we can get AI to accelerate these migrations. So I want to talk to you about that. But I want to show you a little bit about Databricks first. So we saw a little bit of Alex's environment. But Databricks is much more accessible than just notebooks. Unity Catalog is great. You have this big search bar. You can find what you're looking for. You get to browse all the metadata. You get to understand data by viewing its relationships, if the primary key foreign key was entered by your data engineers. And then you can understand the data. How is my data related? What does it look like? What are the comments? And then where did my data come from? How did it get here? You can even browse lineage all the way back to the source. So if the source was dropped in files on a volume, you can go all the way back to that volume and you can see exactly where that data came from. This really helps with data understanding. And then who consumes my data? Where is it going? Who is using it? What dashboards is it ending up in? And finally, you can grant permissions inside of Unity Catalog. So it's a great one-stop shop to find what you're looking for, understand it, see where it came from, and then share it with other people. My SQL at Databricks has been one of the most constantly evolving things. We kind of heard from our customers that they want much simpler experiences for their SQL workers. And we've been bringing AI to the forefront of helping these users get what they need done really, really fast. And in this example here, this is actually a retail brokerage firm data set. It's a synthetic data set that I use all the time at Databricks called TPCDI. But essentially, I've created this report here. And one of my users called me up and he said, hey, I need to add credit rating to this report query. And hey, you know what? We can't read your code. Can you comment it? Who likes commenting code? Yeah, one guy, one person, right? I told the AI, hey, add credit rating from the customer table and comment my code while you're at it. And it did exactly that. One shot. It was actually great. I would say one of the things that's been really amazing at Databricks is that the assistant, so as we have like brilliant AI researchers at Databricks, the assistant has been getting smarter and smarter and smarter like every day. It's absolutely mind-boggling. So now your data workers can get so much done with so less time just operating in the platform. A couple of my other favorite features that enable what I call true 10x productivity is you can take one cell and put it into focus mode, where you only focus on that one thing. That cell takes up the whole screen. And then when you're done doing what you're doing, you can unfocus and you go back to notebook mode. It's one of the most amazing features that I've seen in software today, because it kind of unifies that world between a SQL editor and a notebook. Because when you're in SQL, generally you have to create scripts. It's generally not one window, so you need multiple windows. I think that's the best unification of both worlds, the SQL editor world and the notebook world. And then my other favorite feature is that if you have a SQL notebook and you have SQL cells, SQL wasn't inherently dependent. We made it dependent with programmatic extensions to it and writing scripts. But generally, you can write many SQL statements and they aren't dependent upon each other. So you can actually run SQL cells in parallel. It's really great when you need to do root cause analysis and you need to get down to the bottom of something. And then because Databricks is a completely unified platform, our data governance, the warehouse, and the orchestration layer, you get amazing, simple, real-time monitoring and recovery. So in the UI, you can see if your jobs are failing, why are they failing? Do I have a common error? Maybe I need to do some root cause analysis. Maybe we need to fix that. And on top of that, we have what's called lakehouse monitoring. You can build alerts, kind of like data quality bots, right on top of your data as it's being ingested. And if a data comes in and it exceeds maybe a standard deviation or two, you get a bot, an alert that goes to the data team saying, hey, something looks off in this data. Someone should look at it before it busts the dashboard up, right? Maybe be proactive instead of reactive. And then finally, it's funny, Alex said the fat finger. That is, I use that too all the time. In the second screenshot, you see here that some engineer fat fingered an S after insert. They called it inserts and they failed my job. So I got to fix that. I fixed the error. I changed inserts to insert. And then I click this magical button called repair task. It knows exactly where it failed to pick up. I click repair run. And that's it. It fixes it. It's the simple real-time monitoring and recovery. I swear, those three things used to be like three full-time jobs at places that I used to work, like being able to just do these things. And we've made them super duper simple, which is why I really love the platform. So let's get down to the crux of this. The number one thing I hear from people that want to adopt Databricks is, you guys are great. You beat the incumbents. You annihilated the competition. Unfortunately, our systems integrator or Databricks Professional Services came back to us with a multi-million-dollar, multi-year migration. We can't do that. We're sorry. We're just going to have to keep doing what we're doing. So I actually have been talking about this at Summit, and I had a few people implement parts of these, and we've had some amazing results, and I want to talk to you about it. Now, one thing I hear from CDOs, CIOs, and architects is I cannot tell my entire company we're going to migrate everything all at once. I need to give flexibility to all my business units and their leaders. So you're going to have to give me some options. So actually, we launched Lakehouse Federation last year in public preview, and it went GA, I think this past May or June. It is one of the fastest growing parts of our product in Databricks SQL today. And I highly recommend everyone just get started super quick with Federation. You connect directly to the data where it sits, and you could start using it in Databricks right away. But usually, like, Federation is not the end-all, be-all. Some people will be like, well, doesn't performance stink on a Federation? I'm like, yeah, everyone's bounded by the speed of light. Like, you can't federate fast on joins, right? So actually, we have what's called materialization, materialized views. You can materialize that data on the cloud. People will ask me, well, isn't that really a copy? A copy is one shot. When you copy something, it's just one and done. It's stale, right? Materialized views will keep that cloud version constantly up to date, so you don't have to worry about it. Your users are just going to get fresh data all the time, and they can just get what they need done. Plus, this lowers the stress on those federated systems. Typically, we're federating to on-prem, and typically, people have not invested in the hardware on-prem, and those servers are like redlined, running to the nines. They can't take the pressure of these modern data and AI applications. So that materialization really helps lower that stress on those systems. And then finally, we're going to ingest the data, but we need a low latency, high throughput way for just the changes. We call this change data capture, or CDC. And this is where we acquired Archeon last year, and their their tech is going to fit inside of Lakeflow Connect, but that's for the OLTP sources, right? That's not for the data that's been transformed in the warehouse. So that's how we do step one. And now we're going to talk about how you actually bring that data in. But first, why is the federation step super important? Because we actually started talking to customers about federating first and then connecting their consumers up to Databricks to the federated source. And then we have Unity Catalog that will actually track end-to-end lineage. We'll track the pipeline lineage to the consumption lineage, down to the column level, automatic. It automatically happens while the users are using the system. That means we know exactly who's using what, down to the column level. We had a customer say, we want to do a migration, but we believe that people only consume 50% or less of the data. We just don't know which 50% that is, but we think we can optimize our migration. And so they implemented this. They did find that 50% of their pipelines led to tables nobody consumed. So they cut their migration in half, and then they had a prioritized list. Here are our most popular data sources. They went back to the business and said, here's your prioritized list of what you consumed. They brought the receipts. So now they have buy-in, right? So now everyone's bought in, everyone wants to migrate, and they accelerated much faster. But now how do you accelerate the 50% you want to bring into the cloud? Right? And it's funny how we've implemented this a couple different ways with AI. Alex chose the agent method, where he actually interrogates the data warehouse, pulls back the functionality, and tries to convert it A to B, and then repeatedly tries to hit it and tries to get the correct one. That's one way to do it. And that's interesting because when I was talking to folks about like 5-6 months ago, everyone was struggling to do A to B conversion. What Alex did is actually novel. I did not think of that. I actually thought of this. What if instead of translating A to B directly, what if we took that metadata-driven framework that was all the rage for the past 20 years in systems integration migrations, right? But the most expensive part But the most expensive part of that all is paying, consultants to extract the metadata out of these systems, right? Because you used to have to throw bodies at this problem. And that's what made this so expensive. So I had postulated, what if we used AI to extract that metadata? Because all SSIS, Informatica, Talend, I think ab initio is something different, but all they are is XML files or structured data files underneath the covers, right? And LLMs are great at parsing out semi-structured data. Like they're actually really good at it. And then SQL, stored procedures, functions, it's all just SQL, and SQL is a structured query language. It's kind of like a semi-structured document. LLMs are great at parsing those types of documents. And then you map it to a metadata-driven framework, and then we put it into Databricks, or actually you could put it anywhere. And actually, it's a funny story. Thomas actually implemented that at a customer in July, and we saw an 80% speed up. Now, what I find most interesting is that both methodologies yielded an 80% speed up in migration with AI. So I think we're all converging on the same idea. AI massively accelerates migrations. Massively. No matter how you slice and dice it, no matter how you're doing this, no matter your secret sauce, I do think I really like Alex's approach. There are some things I like on other approaches too. But I think we're all converging on this same idea. AI can massively accelerate these migrations to a tune of something we have not seen before. Enterprise data warehouse migrations used to be a 4-letter word. None of us like it. How much of us have trauma from migrations? Anybody? Who's got trauma from migrations? I do. Whew. So I think it's a thing of the past. I think this is a very interesting space to be in right now. So another question I normally get, and I like just talking about this just to deal with the elephant in the room. How does Databricks work? We have a little bit of Fabric Power BI, maybe we have some Snowflake. How does Databricks fit? The question I normally get is, how can I use you all the best? What best parts are there of all three? And generally I say, well, how do you define best, right? But if you want to use the classic literature of like what each vendor has been good at traditionally, Databricks is great at ETL, data science, machine learning, and AI. Traditionally, 7 years ago, we didn't have a warehouse. Over the past 6 years, we We've been building a data warehouse, and now it's world-class, the fastest growing product in SaaS software, enterprise SaaS software that we track. But you can absolutely use Snowflake. Snowflake can read Databricks Delta Uniform with its Iceberg reader. We actually just heard that Snowflake, via their Iceberg REST API, can query Unity Catalog directly. That's great. We don't think you should copy data around all over the place in the cloud. So if Microsoft or Snowflake or anybody else says, hey, why don't you copy data into OneLake, or why don't you copy data into Snowflake? We don't think that's a great idea. Actually, most leaders agree you should process your data in the cloud once, and then everybody should read from that one copy. You should not proliferate many copies of data in the cloud. Copying data in the cloud is, next to compute time, is the most expensive thing you can do in the cloud. So that's my recommendation, but buyer beware, your mileage may vary. And then Fabric, Power BI, and any of these BI tools can connect directly to Databricks SQL and can take advantage of our record-breaking data warehouse for price performance, and it gains the benefit of Unity Catalog. So that's, if you wanted to use things the best and you wanted to have a unified architecture that had a space for everybody, that's my opinionated point of view. This is not endorsed by Databricks. I'm just calling it out, even though I think it's the best. So what's the next thing? So now we've converted all our ETL, right? We've migrated our data warehouse. But it's not over yet. Actually, a lot of organizations, they want to bring the power of data and AI. They want to democratize it to all of their employees. And it's still inaccessible. Why? Traditionally, the entry point for data has been business intelligence, right? It used to be reports back in the day, maybe SSRS, but then along came Tableau and kind of just shook the world up with its self-service capabilities. And then the empire struck back with Power BI. And now we're kind of dealing with these tools, right? But they're not great. Actually, we talked to a lot of customers about this, and they're like, why do I have to have extracts? Why do I have to do this extra step and copy data again in order to get good performance? And then I have to actually manage governance separately. Because now that I have an extra copy of that data, now I got to figure out how to re-implement data governance on top. Like, that's not great. And then what they're seeing about these bolt-on bots is that their contextual understanding is not great. And really the joke I hear is, man, all the employees are using Copilot for is write poems. I'm like, that's not funny. That's pretty expensive, the SKU you need in order to get the Copilot and the Fabric. Well, when we ask customers, what would you want? And they want fast dashboards with no extracts. That's like the very first thing that we hear is, we're sick and tired of client-server technology. Like, this is 2024. Why do I still have to manage a server? Why do I still have to manage client software? And then it's, why do I have to manage extracts? And we agree. We don't think you have to manage extracts. Actually, there's a whole team at Databricks that's trying to get rid of extracts. And then I want my governance to be utilized. Like, I declared my data governance once. Why doesn't every tool just use that? Why do I have to re-implement data governance? Why can't everything just use the one data governance that I implemented? And then these assistants, they should be smart. They should contextually understand the data, my metadata, and the user's intent, right? And Databricks has smart AI people. We should be able to figure this out. And we created this product called AI BI. Now, do I like the name? No. Did I actively tell the marketing leader that this is a horrible name? Yes. Did they name it anyway? Yes. But this is what it's called. What is AI BI? If you were to ask me, it's the next evolutionary step in self-service to make data and AI truly democratized in your organization. And we were rethinking the game in how you bring these tools to the users. And what does that mean? I gotta tell you, I have like a 99% hit on this. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a shot right now. For all of the dashboard creators in the room, okay? What is the first question you hear after you bring your new fancy dashboard to your users? It's the very first follow-up question you get. Anybody?
And it exports to Excel.
Thank you. 99% still going. Why? Why though? Why? Because everybody wants to slice and dice data their own way. Everyone wants to bring the data into their spreadsheet silo on their desktop, and they want to do their own transformations, right? I need to answer my questions. We think the system should be able to do that on your own. There's no reason. Because what happens is, as soon as that spreadsheet goes on that user's laptop, you have no idea what they did to it. All of a sudden, they bring that to an executive, like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Well, how did you get this? I extracted it from this person's dashboard. And then you go to that person and they're like, I don't know where this came from. Where did you get this? They're like, I took it on my laptop and I did a pivot table and, now who knows what's going on, right? Actually, with Genie, what we're seeing is you have your dashboard, you take that data model and you put it into Genie. And then Genie, basically a user can log in and it's text to answer. We have various parts of the platform. There's like text to code, where text to SQL, text to Python, you ask in natural language, it gives you code. In our AI BI dashboards, we have text to viz, which I'll show you that in a second. If you want to create one of these visualizations, you just have a little prompt box, you ask it what you want to see, and it creates a visualization for you. Genie is text to answer. I ask a question in natural language, and what's awesome about it is you can ask it in any language. You can even ask it in broken language, like start it in English, finish it in Spanish. And good luck what the response is going to be, because sometimes it's all Spanish, sometimes it's all English. But what's interesting about this is it understands every language. And now everybody can ask their follow-up questions here. And the benefit is you know what they asked, and you know exactly the queries that were fired off. So when someone takes one of these vizzes or takes one of these tables and they go to a meeting and they start kicking up dust with executives, you can go back to this room and you can see exactly what happened. And that auditability, that audit trail is actually pretty amazing. The early customers that started using this were flabbergasted. So we save it in a system table. No, we save it in a system table. So like the analysts later on, they can review all the questions, they can see common questions, and then they can fix their dashboard. Maybe, oh man, everybody is asking about region level 2. Maybe I have to add region level 2 into my dashboard. It's actually changing a lot it's the feedback loop. Now you have 100% feedback loop into your dashboard, into your self-service analytics. I think it's been pretty amazing. Our AI BI dashboards, people ask, are you trying to like unseat Tableau or Power BI? I mean, do you know what Power BI is at this point? I mean, it's basically like everything. It's like a warehouse in a box. You can ingest data, you can do everything, right? It's no longer just dashboards. Tableau is the same thing. You got Tableau data prep, you've got Tableau this, you've got Tableau that. I mean, these things are like different tools now. What we want to do is we want to revolutionize. We want to make creating visual analytics for everybody super duper simple. We just want to nail that. The rest of the platform people use, but we want to focus on delivering a great self-service experience for our users, completely web-based. No servers to manage, no client software to manage, no deployments. It just works, right? And when I said text to viz, this is kind of what that looks like. You see up here, it just says shows customers by month and year who generated greater than $100,000 in monthly revenue. And it's going to generate the query. You click accept, you take that query, you run it, and you go over here, you say pie chart of total revenue by count, and it'll even auto-complete field names. So if you don't remember what that field name is, it'll help you auto-complete all those field names. And then it just generates the viz. Say what you want about pie charts, but that actually is pretty cool. So that's kind of what we see now, is that people are able to take their data, visualize it really, really fast, and they're able to deliver solutions faster than ever before. How does this work? How is it magic? Is it really a genie? No. It's all just, what is the saying? Any sufficiently advanced technology can be perceived as magic. This is just really good engineering behind the scenes. Actually, Unity Catalog is very prevalent in the successful implementations of Genie. Why? The metadata is king. Context is king with these LLMs. The metadata boosts context for these large language models. Actually, what we notice is that if the more complete metadata you have, the most verbose and complete metadata you have, the more successful outcomes you get with Genie. And there's a lot of interesting things that we're seeing customers do that actually make it really, really effective. But it also respects your governance. So when you give people permissions to data in Unity, Genie respects it, which is actually pretty cool. It respects it row and column level security. So if you're dealing with PII, PHI, you govern once and you implement everywhere. And then there's end-to-end lineage. Remember what I said earlier, like where does this data end up? who consumes this data, where does it go. Now you can see exactly which dashboards it ends up in, which data rooms it ends up in. So you're able to check end-to-end lineage, exactly where your data came from and exactly who's consuming it. So one of the common questions I used to hear is, if I make this change, who's impacted, right? Who do I have to notify that I'm making a change of? In Databricks, it's actually super simple. It's just a system table. And so we think that this is not just replacing or kind of bringing another BI tool into the marketplace. We actually want to change how we can bring self-service, the data democratization to the every person, right? You no longer have to be super technical. I mean, you go into Tableau or Power BI, you need training on all of the widgets and the options and the things. Like, I think I need to watch like 16 YouTube videos just to understand how to build a Power BI dashboard now. Like, I haven't been in Power BI in years. I had no idea what I was doing when I went into it the other week. Here, we're just trying to get your people effective and started really, really fast so you can build and deploy these awesome real-time dashboards as fast as possible. Genie. We think that this is the next frontier in self-service. When we want to bring Databricks to the every user, we think Genie is the way to go because everybody needs to ask follow-up questions. I actually I heard one use case from a customer that they said, we have one executive who doesn't even look at dashboards anymore. He has 3 threads in Genie. He just goes in and he asks for an update on each of his threads every month. That's it. He's got 3 questions he needs answered. He used to have to pull up 5 dashboards to get those 3 questions answered. Now he goes to a data room, he has 3 threads, doesn't even ask the questions anymore. He has 3 threads and just asks for it to update. It's actually pretty cool. You essentially can have everyone serve themselves in a centralized, like conformed way so that you can track what's going on. And then the data room is actually smart. It knows how to answer the person's question, but the smartest part, it actually will tell you if it cannot answer a question with its given data. I thought that was actually the most interesting part about all of this. When it can't answer your question, it won't try to, we call it hallucinations, but I call it bullshitting because it's kind of the same thing, right? It doesn't hallucinate on the user. It'll actually say, I can't answer that question with the given context, which is, I think, is smarter than any of the other AIs I've been seeing out there. So you can ask like these Q&A inside of the chat, and it actually remembers. I said that we have like certain threads where users can keep for a longer period of time. You can actually pull up previous threads and pick up where you left off. So I said that one example where the exec just every month, he needs to check these 3 questions and he goes in there and he refreshes them. And it gives them back these responses in natural language. So if they ask a question and it can answer it, it does, or it gives a data table or a visualization. One of the use cases that I see super popular is I need some data to toss into a slide to go to a meeting. Let's go into a data room real quick and get that data. You don't have to like interrupt an analyst. I don't have to go write some SQL. I don't have to go into Power BI or something else to generate a visualization. I just get what I need and I get going. So here you can get, we think that AI with data intelligence, you get intelligence from your data platform with Genie, understanding the baseline comments, all of the metadata inside of Unity Catalog. And it also learns from your SQL queries. I think this one is the more cooler one. The more your users use the system, the smarter the system gets at answering their questions. Because if it sees common queries and common join types and filters, and it thinks it can answer the same question the same way, it will actually kind of grab that query from the system history and it'll reproduce it. And that's actually pretty smart. So if there's a consistent way that things are done, it makes sure it follows that. There's this thing called instructions. Now, metadata is great. Understanding comments, relationships with data, lineage, all that stuff is great. Sometimes there's business contextual language, right? Sometimes, like especially in the insurance industry, there are acronyms for everything. And the LLM is not going to understand a lot of the company-specific acronyms. Actually, industry acronyms it understands. If it's been published in like online anywhere or in a book, it understands the acronym. But a lot of times company-specific acronyms, and we all know that companies have their own vernacular, you can actually put them in instructions. And this is just natural language specifics about how to generate a query or what data looks like, right? Some common examples is when I say, BTAP, it means this thing in our language. Or when I say I want profit, I actually want non-GAAP, and that means this. And here you're basically giving it additional language that contextualizes how it will write the query for you, but you don't have to write it in SQL. Because typically what you'd have to do is you'd have to go to the business partner. The business partner would give your analyst the logic. Your analyst would then have to go to the system and translate that business logic into SQL. Well, now you just give that business logic to what we call instructions in natural language, and the AI will actually generate the SQL. It's actually pretty interesting. And then we actually take in real-time user feedback. So if users click those buttons like the thumbs up, thumbs down, or if there's different types of clarification, the AI will actually ask the user for clarification, or it'll use the feedback in the thumbs up, thumbs down to generate better answers. So it leads to really good outcomes. When we say like governance secure generated insights, kind of this is what that looks like with the Genie monitoring. We had asked earlier about how does it know, where are the questions? This is the Genie monitoring. You can see here that everything is logged. So the admin of the room can actually see all of the questions that were asked. So it can say, I want to see all the positive interactions, or I want to see all the negative interactions, and they get to see exactly what happened in that room. So the analyst later can actually go and manually evaluate or automatically evaluate previous interactions, and they can use that to build better data rooms. And everything in Genie honors your access policies. Like I said earlier, you govern once, and then it's secured everywhere on Databricks and anything that plugs into Databricks or Unity Catalog. And that's how you get secure, simplified answers out of Unity Catalog and the data intelligence layer. All right. That's my talk on massively accelerated migrations for not only ETL, but also BI. Any questions before we wrap?
So I thought the end-to-end lineage is really interesting, something a lot of our clients make use of. But a lot of our clients are on other BI platforms, Tableau, Power BI, etc. Is there any kind of functionality to add custom lineage to allow you to see where your data is going on these other BI platforms, these other dashboards, add that in a custom way so you'll see that lineage within Databricks?
So as long as you connect that BI tool up to Databricks SQL for the warehouse end, it'll track all that lineage. So you don't have to use AI BI. You just have to connect the BI tool up to the SQL warehouse in Databricks to connect to the data, and then it'll track all that lineage.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's not just an AI BI. It's actually anything that connects to a Databricks warehouse. So it could be like a Go app, a JavaScript app, and like we have Node.js, JDBC, ODBC, the PySQL connector, anything that connects up to Databricks compute, usually through one of those connectors or some other way. The lineage is all tracked, as long as it connects up to anything that respects Unity Catalog. Any other questions?
Oh, no. Have you thought of breaking some simple Power BI dashboards?
Oh, it's funny. I actually have so the question is, do you have anything that will take a Power BI dashboard and bring it into AI BI? Funny story. So I have an old friend who runs a consulting firm in Chicago, Wavical, I don't know if you've heard of them, that actually has a tool that converts Power BI, Tableau, and QuickSight to each other, and they want to build one for AI BI. So I'm actually talking to a firm right now to build one, but it does not exist yet. Yeah. Looker? I mean, I think we should build them all. We were talking, I mean, Thomas has one too. Again, all of these files that the ETL tool and the BI tools use, they're all essentially structured documents under the covers, right? You pull back the mask, it's all either XML or JSON, or some type of structured language. And again, LLMs are just awesome at pulling out metadata from these structured documents. So I think there's a lot of exciting things. One day, maybe next year, maybe the year after that, I'd like to, especially seeing what Alex did. I can't believe you just connected to Snowflake and sucked it all out. Kind of like in my head. Anybody see Stranger Things? Remember Vecna? That's when I vision in my head. Maybe that was too graphic. But that's kind of like what I think. What if you could do that with your ETL warehouse and your BI tool, and it's just super duper simple? I think with AI, we can do that maybe in a year. I think it's possible. Except for ab initio. Who knows what file format they use under the covers? I think there's one BI tool that's do something funky. Maybe it's mode. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you all for coming out.